So let's look at this function. And we're going to apply something called a chain rule, or sometimes the function of a function rule it's called, in this sort of function. The most awkward thing about this particular one is it the chain rule I'm applying, and which bit am I going to call u in this? Because we call one part of the function u. If we look back at the others, the quotient rule, it's fairly obvious usually that it's the quotient rule, because I've got one divided by the other, top one u, bottom one v. And if we go back to the original problem at the beginning of today, that's usually fairly obvious as well. You know, I've got one function multiplied by another. So that's the product rule, and it's fairly clear which one's u and which one's v. It's not always so obvious in this chain rule, so it needs a little bit more thought. If I want to find out what y is, this original function y, then I ask myself the question, what have I got to do to get y? I take a value of x, and then I've got to do something with that x. I've got to apply a function to it, and that's this function, e to the 4x. And my calculator, shift e to the 4 times whatever x is, and I'll get it. So that's the function. And then once I've done that, I'm going to apply another function to that answer. So it's a situation where I've got one function inside another. And that tells me this is an example of something which is going to need a chain rule to differentiate. The thing I call u is the thing I do first. So to identify it, I ask, what have I got to do to get y? The first thing I do is this. And that's inside a bracket, so that helps as well. The first thing you do with BIDMAS is you do what's inside the bracket. So the first thing I do is that. So that's what I'm going to call u. So this is u. It's the inner function. So we call the inner function u. If you're trying to work out what y is, the first thing you'd do would be e to the 4x. Then you'd find 3 times the sign of that answer. So the first thing you do, the inner function, or the first thing you do, if you like, is u. So what we do is we apply this chain rule to it. Here it is mathematically written. And what it's saying is you differentiate ignoring the inner function and then multiply by the differential of the inner function. And so it's a bit of a mouthful and it looks a bit awkward here. So the best way to do it is just by example, and we'll see how it works. So let's look at one or two examples of this chain rule.